Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Martial Universe Season 6 Part 17 based on novel. So let's start. A deep deafening sound once again resounded across the sky. After which, the gazes of the entire city gathered towards the sky. At that spot, Lin Dong's hand had already forcefully inserted itself into the body of the fire giant as if it was the sharpest blade. His hand had cut through the extremely powerful defense of the fire giant. Many people were inevitably gripped by fear when this scene reflected itself in their eyes. Although they had never personally exchanged blows with Xu Qianhua, from its current aura, they could tell just how powerful this fire giant that the latter had created was. No one would have thought that such a strong defense would still be forcibly penetrated by Lin Dong. Such destructive strength was really a little shocking. His body concealed within the fire giant, when Xu Qianhua saw Lin Dong's blade-like palm penetrate his flaming defenses, alarm and fury flashed across his face. However, his expression quickly hardened. With a change in hand seals, the surrounding raging flames suddenly whizzed over. The flames frantically twined around Lin Dong's arm as an untamed hot chi continuously tunneled into Lin Dong's body with the aim of causing the Yuan power in the latter's body to riot. Evidently, Lin Dong sensed Xu Qianhua's intention. However, there was no panic to be seen in his eyes. Instead, he merely smiled in a mocking manner. In the next instant, a thought passed through his mind as devouring power suddenly spread from within his body. The torrid chi that had invaded into his body was completely swallowed in a split second. Just watch how I break this flame demon body of yours. Lin Dong raised his head and grinned at Xu Qianhua's true body. With a twist of his palm, devouring power immediately erupted. The flame demon body was created from Xu Qianhua's Yuan power through some special method, causing it to become extremely powerful. However, this kind of strength naturally came from the Yuan power that filled it. Now that Lin Dong's devouring power had emerged, the Yuan power swiftly started to disappear at a shockingly rapid pace. Immediately, the flame demon body started to fade. What are you doing? The change in the flame demon body was naturally sensed by Xu Qianhua, whose mind was connected to it. His expression immediately changed as he sternly cried out. However, Lin Dong completely ignored Xu Qianhua's cry. Devouring power wildly erupted and actually swallowed most of the Yuan power within the flame demon body after several seconds. Having lost a great amount of Yuan power, the body of the flame demon body slowly started to crumble under numerous shocked gazes. This soul martial arts that Xu Qianhua was so proud of was actually broken by Lin Dong with such ease. The flame demon body disappeared and the body of Xu Qianhua once again appeared before the entire city. However, his face was currently colored a furious green, while the gaze with which he looked at Lin Dong was faintly tainted with fear. Regardless of how proud he was, he had understood through this battle that Lin Dong could not be compared to those half-baked dark horses whom he had met before. Swoosh! Lin Dong blasted apart the flame demon body and watched Xu Qianhua's true body appear. Without skipping a beat, Lin Dong moved and flew forward as his green-scaled hand cut towards Xu Qianhua's throat like lightning. Humph! Seeing that Lin Dong remained unforgiving despite having gained the advantage, Xu Qianhua snorted in anger. His spear shook as it stirred an extremely sharp wind that ruthlessly pierced towards Lin Dong's hand. From the way he saw it, though Lin Dong was quite powerful, it was likely that the latter would not dare to meet the long spear with his bare hands. Clang! However, he had miscalculated. Lin Dong not only did not show the slightest intention of dodging Xu Qianhua's sharp spear. Instead, he reached out and grabbed the spear. Creak creak! Sparks wildly erupted from Lin Dong's palm. However, no matter how the sharp spear struggled, it was unable to escape the restraint of Lin Dong's palm. Shatter! Lin Dong suddenly clenched. The green scales that covered his palm suddenly flashed as a frightening force exploded. Immediately, a clear breaking sound rang out as the long crimson spear in Xu Qianhua's hand, an earthly soul treasure, was forcefully crushed by Lin Dong's hand. After crushing the spear tip, Lin Dong flung his hand as cold glows shot out in all directions. With unusual sharpness, they closed in on Xu Qianhua. Bam bam! Zhu Qianhua's figure quickly backed off in a sorry manner, a golden glow flickering on his body. After enduring several shots, he finally emerged from the storm formed from the spear-tip fragments. Bastard! Although the attack did not cause much harm to him, Zhu Qianhua's expression had become extremely ugly. Earlier, his flame demon body was broken by Lin Dong. Now, even his weapon had been shattered. It seemed as if he had completely fallen into a disadvantageous spot. Just as Zhu Qianhua could not endure it any longer and was about to curse furiously, a light flashed in front of him. His pupils immediately shrunk. A figure had adhered close to his front amidst the uproar that now shrouded the entire city. The figure that had flashed and arrived in a ghost-like manner caused Zhu Qianhua's pupils to shrink as a feeling of extreme danger spread out from the bottom of his heart. Without thinking, a bright golden glow exploded from within his body. A hand surrounded by a green glow seemed to tear through space at a speed that could not be seen with the naked eye and heavily slammed onto Zhu Qianhua's chest. Bam! A low and deep muffled sound appeared at this moment as the bright golden glow on Zhu Qianhua's chest instantly dimmed. A reddish hue surfaced on his face before a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out from his now backwards flying body. Upon seeing Zhu Qianhua's body flying backwards in a miserable manner, the entire city fell into silence. The eyes of many onlookers were practically popping out of their sockets. This was especially the case for Tianzhen, whose face was filled with disbelief. He was clearly aware of Zhu Qianhua's strength. He was an expert at the peak of the 3 Yuan Nirvana stage, and he already possessed the ability to attempt the 4th Nirvana tribulation. However, such a person had lost so miserably in a one-on-one battle with Lin Dong. Just how strong did Lin Dong become in the past few months? Anyone could tell from this battle that the Great Gan Empire's fire general, Zhu Qianhua, posed no threat to Lin Dong. The nearby Zhu Qianhua's face was colored with both green and white. Clearly, he was furious. However, he was also no fool. If he continued to treat Lin Dong like those half-baked dark horses, he would not possess the qualifications to become one of the Great Gan Empire's 4 generals. The strength that Lin Dong had displayed was enough to make Zhu Qianhua extremely wary. Lin Dong stared at Zhu Qianhua. This time around, he did not attack again. Although he was now unafraid of the latter, he still needed to show some caution towards the super empire behind this individual. Forget about whether he was able to kill Zhu Qianhua. Even if he could do so, the price he would have to pay would also be quite heavy. This was not a situation that Lin Dong wished to see. Both of you have lost. Lin Dong looked at Zhu Qianhua, whose face was a mixture of green and white, before suddenly declaring in a calm manner. Upon hearing these words, Zhu Qianhua was startled. He hurriedly turned around as he heard a soul-stirring loud rumble suddenly erupt from the distant battleground. At that spot, a monstrous ferocity swept over. A strong figure covered in a bloody glow swung his fist like a demon. The bloody light transformed into a ferocious tiger head on the storm of fists which descended. Each blow was powerful enough to wound a 3 Yuan Nirvana stage expert. Boom boom boom. The fists were accompanied by a shocking wind pressure as they pounded Muhuan's mountain-like body from all directions. Immediately, a large crack extended on the yellow soil mountain body, growing larger and larger until it completely exploded apart with a boom. Bang! The mountain body exploded as a figure shot out from it in a miserable manner. In the end, a row of buildings below were turned to rubble as a dust cloud extended outwards. A moment later, Muhuang's body rushed out with a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth and came to stand atop a building. The strength that he was so proud of had completely been suppressed by Little Flame, causing him to end up in a disadvantageous position. This was not a situation that he had never encountered before, but it was the first time that he was forced into this manner by someone from a low-rank empire. After sending Muhuang flying, when Little Flame saw that Lin Dong did not attempt to kill all his enemy, the blood glow over Little Flame's body was also slightly withdrew, while the blood tiger on his fist also gradually scattered. All the gazes in the entire city had gathered towards these two figures that seemed to have suddenly become extremely dazzling. None of them had expected that they were actually able to defeat the experts who possessed quite a great reputation within the ancient battlefield and had already advanced into the Nirvana ranking. Moreover, this also meant that from now onwards, Lin Dong and Little Flame would truly become experts on the Nirvana ranking. After a year of silence in the chaotic battlefield, Lin Dong had now finally started to emerge. Tianjin's expression was pale as he watched this scene from the front of the Gold Hall. Finally, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. He knew that the future Lin Dong would no longer be an existence that he could offend. It was best that he obediently hid all those grudges from the past in his heart. A cluster of people at a certain spot in the city also looked at the now dazzling Lin Dong with complicated expressions. Some of these faces were not foreign. They were from the Devil Cliff Empire. That fellow is actually already this strong. Shi Xian clenched his teeth, feeling extremely unwilling to resign himself to this situation. However, this unwillingness also contained a trace of fear. Let's not bother about those past grudges. If we provoke him again, we will only be seeking death. Shikuan stared at the figure for a long time. However, all he could do was sigh quietly. Who would have expected that the person who appeared to be akin to an ant in his eyes back then would actually reach this stage that even he have to look up to? Let's go. We'll head to the center of the ancient battlefield. The 100 Empire War should start there. Shikuan waved his hand, turned around and walked out of the city. He really wanted to know just what kind of level this person, who had continued to create miracles, would be able to reach in the 100 Empire War. That was the true place where the strong would compete. The battle in the sky did not end up in stalemate. Instead, the battle ended surprisingly quickly. One could identify which party was in an advantageous position just by looking at sorry state which Xu Tianhua and Nu Huang were in, before turning to look at Lin Dong, whose facial expression was peaceful, while his aura was razor-sharp like the tip of a knife. The result of the battle was very astonishing. No one had expected things would come to such an end. The people in this city had heard of Lin Dong's numerous astonishing feats. However, this time around, the one who fought against him was not an individual like Shikuan. Instead, it was a practitioner from a genuine super empire. However, no matter how surprised they were, it would not affect the results. They raised their heads towards the sky and fixed their gazes on the two figures, who appeared rather resplendent under the sunshine. Suddenly, a weird feeling arose in their hearts. There was a chance that these two fellows, who were from a low-ranked empire, might become the most dazzling dark horses in the 100 Empire War this time around. Everyone was eager to find out just how far these two practitioners could progress in the 100 Empire War, that was filled with elites. That was because they want to see if there was anyone who could truly challenge the dominance of the behemoth-like super empires. As a cooling breeze blew across the sky, Lin Dong's robe glided lightly. His gaze was fixated on unsettled Xu Tianhua and he was not afraid of letting the latter escape. Lin Dong was satisfied with just defeating Xu Tianhua. However, if the latter was not tactful with the current situation, Lin Dong would not make too many concessions as well. Indeed, he was slightly wary of the super empires, but that did not mean he was afraid of them. Given Lin Dong's and Little Flame's current capabilities, if they were to use all of their means, they could even put up a fight with a 4-yuan Nirvana stage practitioner. Furthermore, besides them, there was also Little Martin, who possessed unfathomable depths of powers and had yet to take any action so far. Even though Lin Dong did not want him to take action, that fellow would not stand by idly if they were in a critical situation. Possessing such a lineup, Lin Dong was like a tiger with wings in this ancient battlefield. Hence, those previous situations where he was being forced to run and hide all over the place would not easily happen again. At this moment, Little Flame's muscular figure appeared behind Lin Dong. The intertwining scars on his body made him look extremely fearsome. After witnessing Little Flame's valiant display of strength, all the onlookers would not be so foolish as to treat him as a blockhead, whose capabilities were not as good as he looked anymore. Little Martin flew lazily across the sky and stood beside Lin Dong while staring mockingly at Xu Tianhua. Even though his aura was not as fiendish as Little Flame's, some observant individuals could sense those purple-black pupils of Little Martin were flickering with a palpitating chilliness. As those two individuals stood behind Lin Dong, there seemed to be an incorporeal enormous pressure given off, causing one to be afraid of looking down on this trio. Naturally, Xu Tianhua could sense that kind of pressure as well. At once, his facial expression changed slightly. At the same time, the sound of wind flapping came from behind him. A slightly devastated Huang Mu had flown over. There was a grave and worried look in his eyes as he stared at the Lindong trio. Then, he pursed his lips and spoke into Xu Qianhua's ears with a soft voice. The three of them are very powerful. If we really go to war, I'm afraid we cannot defeat them by ourselves. Upon hearing these words, it was obvious that Xu Qianhua could not help but clench his fists. His proud and arrogant nature made it hard for him to accept such reality. However, he was not a stupid individual, as he also knew that this was a fact. In the previous battle, his highly prized soul martial art was directly defeated by Lin Dong. Meanwhile, the physically talented Mu Huang was also thoroughly defeated in his own game by that gigantic fellow behind Lin Dong. Furthermore, standing besides the two of them, the most mysterious-looking fellow had yet to make a move. Xu Qianhua was not dumb enough to believe that this handsome-looking, yet lazy young man would be a simple pushover. No matter how they sized the current situation, there was no way that they could obtain a dominant position. It appeared that they must give up on their plan of seizing the mysterious sect's inheritance. I feel really bitter. Xu Qianhua cursed in his heart while gritting his teeth. If he had known earlier that this would happen, he would have called the other two generals to tag along. If the four of them combined forces, they might be able to contend with Lindong's lineup. You have won. After judging the situation clearly, Xu Qianhua announced with his eyes drooping. At the same time, he did not mince his words and even shrugged his shoulders at ease. I'm flattered. Lindong smiled. No arrogance, no impatience. In fact, he did not show the slightest bit of arrogance just because he defeated the practitioner from a super empire. Even though he was unhappy with the fact that Xu Qianhua and his counterparts wanted to seize his inheritance, he did not want to start a feud with their great Gan Empire. Lindong, you have indeed exceeded my expectations. However, I will remember what has happened today. The next time we meet, I will collect my debt, Xu Qianhua said insipidly. He was not afraid of infuriating Lindong. With the great Gan Empire backing him, no matter how domineering Lindong was, he would not dare to kill him. I will look forward to that at all times, Lindong replied indifferently while shooting a glance at Xu Qianhua. The news of you obtaining the mysterious sect's inheritance have long spread out. We are not the only ones who desire your inheritance. Therefore, it might be troublesome for you in the future. I hope you can reach the core zone of the ancient battlefield smoothly. We will wait for you at the 100 Empire War. Xu Qianhua smirked as if he was gloating at Lindong's misfortunes. Then, without giving Lindong any chance to reply, he turned his body and walked off. Eventually, he and Mu Huang became two streaks of rainbow and disappeared into the horizon rapidly. As the Xu Qianhua duo left, the hostile atmosphere that engulfed that city seemed to have dissipated. Numerous gazes that were filled with various emotions were concentrated at the three figures in the sky. That kind of facial expression was rather complicated. Even though they had seen it happen with their own eyes, it was still hard to believe that the three persons who are from a low-ranked empire were able to defeat the practitioners from a super empire. The 100 Empire War was getting more and more interesting. There were murmurings among some people. Recently, seclusive practitioners from various places were emerging constantly at the speed of a rocket. These people eventually became dazzling stars in various areas. All of these individuals were blessed with exceptional talent and fortunate encounters. Therefore, it was difficult to imagine just how a spectacular sight it would be once they gathered together. From a different perspective, these people might be the most outstanding individuals among the countless younger generation members in the Eastern Xian region. When these obstinate and unruly talented Evilders gathered in one place, there was bound to be extreme excitement and violence. They are really troublesome, Lindong spoke softly as he looked at the distant figures of the Xu Qianhua duo. If you find it troublesome, you could have ended it directly. Maybe once your notoriety spread, no one will dare to find trouble with you again, little Martin beamed. Upon hearing these words, Lindong could not help but roll his eyes. He then said, the 3 kings and 4 generals in the Great Gan Empire are no pushovers. Just the Fire General and Mountain General alone, who are the bottom 2 ranking generals out of the 4, already possess such powers. I'm afraid the top two ranking generals, the Wind General and Forest General, would be even more powerful. Furthermore, above these generals, there are the most troublesome so-called three kings. That three fellows should already surpass the 4 Yuan Nirvana stage. Even Lin Dong involuntarily shook his head when he spoke of these. These super empires had foundations that he could not have imagined. They might not even need any inheritance or treasures to reach an altitude that ordinary individuals had a hard time reaching. While everyone was working hard to obtain Nirvana pills, they could throw away millions of Nirvana pills at will. In addition to such foundation, these people were handpicked geniuses, whose achievements were being looked up to by everyone. However, even if other people had a better starting point, Lin Dong was not jealous. Different people had different lives, different individuals put in different types of hard work. In those years, while he was still in the small town of Qingyang Town, he was filled with killer intent towards Lin Langtian, and yet, he did not reveal the slightest bit of his killer intent. During those times, he was like an ant in front of Lin Langtian. With one finger, the latter would be able to crush him and the entire Lin family. However, things did not end up in this way. The youth who shed tears and sweat while training on a hill, became the brightest individual in the Lin clan. Lin Langtian, whom he was forced to revere during those times, ultimately became a stray dog which life status was unknown. Hence, having a good or bad starting point was not important. What mattered the most was the end results. Those super empires might be almighty, however, Lin Dong knew that he would surpass them one day. Big brother, what should we do now? Little Flame scratched his head and gave a sheepish smile, looking totally different from the Little Flame who looked as fiendish as Azura during the battle with Mu Huang previously. It's less than a month to the 100 Empire War. Right now, practitioners from various places are heading towards the core zone of the ancient battlefield. We should also head that way directly, Lin Dong smiled. Little Flame nodded his head. Clearly, he did not have the slightest bit of objection to Lin Dong's instructions. How should we handle that fellow? I think he is definitely part of the reason why those people from Great Gan Empire would seek trouble with us, Little Martin joked sadistically as he looked at the figure in front of the Golden Hall, while scratching his chin. Lin Dong shot a glance in that direction and saw Tianjin staring back at them with a deathly pale face. When he saw Lin Dong looked at him, his scalp went numb and quickly lowered his gaze and did not dare to look Lin Dong in eyes. There's nothing to worry about, let's go. Lin Dong stared indifferently at Tianjin, who no longer had the slightest bit of the dominating aura of Northwest Region's overlord. Eventually, Lin Dong shook his head and did not seem to have any intention of pursuing the matter. It was hard for this kind of people to pose any threat to him. As Lin Dong finished his sentence, he did not wish to stay any longer in this city. With a jolt of his body, he became a beam of dark glow and flew out of the city. Behind him, Little Flame and Little Martin quickly caught up with him. In front of the Golden Hall, when Tianjin saw the departed figures of the Lin Dong trio, cold sweats dripped down from his forehead. Soon after, he laughed at himself. He knew that there would be outstanding individuals in every region of the ancient battle, but clearly, he himself was not qualified to be one in the Northwest region anymore. The youth, who was named Lin Dong, would walk out of this place and step into the place where all the geniuses gathered. That would be the place where the real demonstration of extraordinary talents would take place. The sound of wind parting resounded over the serene blue sky. 3 figures rushed past with lightning-like speed and a low and deep wind pressure on the sea of trees below, forming 3 shallow scars on it. Looking from a distance, it appeared as though it was a green-colored gully. These 3 figures were naturally Lin Dong trio, who had left the ancient hall and were hurrying towards the core area of the ancient battlefield. The size of the ancient battlefield was extremely vast. The northwestern region where Lin Dong's group was located was merely a tiny portion of it. Of course, with such a vast amount of space, it was likely extremely difficult for one to roam the entire area within a short 1 year. Lin Dong's journey to the center of the ancient battlefield was clearly not something that could be accomplished within a short 2 to 3 days. Therefore, they needed to make full use of the time. There is a 10,000 elephant city located along the route from the northwestern region to the center of the ancient battlefield. That is one of the few cities in the ancient battlefield that one must pass through, to reach the central area. Various experts from all over the ancient battlefield are gathered there. At that place, experts who had advanced into the nirvana stage are common, and it could be said to have many hidden experts. Of course, it is also a place that we must pass when entering the central region. Lin Dong's eyes swept slightly around him while they were traveling. Immediately, he turned his head and uttered those words to the other two with a smile. Little Flame scratched his head and smiled in a silly manner. Some fiery heat surged within his eyes. This fellow was addicted to fighting deep within his bones. Being able to fight with those experts was quite an enjoyable event in his opinion. Little Martin did not comment much when he heard this. His eyes swept over the space around them. For some unknown reason, his eyebrows were knitted slightly together. Little Flame, what kind of inheritance did you obtain from the White Tiger Hall? Lin Dong did not notice Little Martin's expression. Instead, he glanced at Little Flame before asking with some curiosity. A martial arts of unknown depth known as the White Tiger Star Scale Mirror. Little Flame laughed. White Tiger Star Scale Mirror. Lin Dong nodded slightly. It was likely that a remnant shadow like Qingxi did not appear within the White Tiger Hall. However, this was only normal. An old demon of abnormal level like Qingxi. It was already very incredible to even have one here. If the other three halls had existences that were similar to him, the strength of the Qiangang Alliance would likely be a little too terrifying. After a brief inquiry about Little Flame's experience in the White Tiger Hall, Lin Dong did not continue his questioning. His eyes were rotated before someone finally noticed Little Martin's expression. He was immediately startled as he softly asked, "Little Martin, what is it?" Little Flame also looked at Little Martin. Upon seeing the latter's narrowed eyes forming a somewhat dangerous arc, his demonic beast unique instincts also caused it to understand something. His forward-charging body suddenly stopped and a dark black metal rod appeared in his hand. His large body directly blocked in front of Lin Dong. Lin Dong's eyebrows were slowly knitted. Powerful mental energy swiftly spread apart. However, his deep probing did not register any response. This did not allow him to heave a sigh of relief, but instead caused his expression to gradually turn solemn. The purple-black glow in Little Martin's eyes flickered and that handsome evil-looking face had appeared a little deeper. In a low voice, he coldly laughed, "We seem to have been targeted by someone." Upon hearing this, Lin Dong's eyes shrunk immediately. He did not sense anything unusual throughout the journey. What did this mean? It meant that the person who had targeted them was so powerful that even they could not sense him. That kind of ability was not something that an ordinary person could achieve. "Can we find him?" Lin Dong softly uttered. A cold glint vaguely flowed in his eyes. He did not expect that they would be immediately targeted by others the moment they left the ancient hall. This matter caused him to feel a little upset. Little Martin smiled and nodded. After which, he suddenly grabbed in front of him and a purple-black light glow rushed out from his palm in a lightning-like manner. After which, it transformed into a purple-black light net that suddenly covered the entire empty space. Sizzle sizzle. The purple-black light net appeared to possess a powerful corrosive strength. Even the invisible air emitted waves of white smoke when the net appeared, causing one's heart to pound wildly upon sight. The purple-black light net covered the empty space under the focus of Lin Dong's group. However, the moment that the net was about to be withdrawn, that empty space finally began to become distorted in front of the eyes of Lin Dong's group. A surprised "ha" was emitted. Immediately, a bright strong glow was suddenly erupted and actually repelled the purple-black net by force. Two somewhat strange figures surfaced from nowhere after the light net was repelled. The two figures were wrapped within a black shadow, causing one to be unable to discern their appearance. However, Lin Dong's expression changed drastically upon his first glance at these two mysterious figures. This was because these two were surprisingly the two mysterious people whom he had seen within the Nirvana burning sky array in the ancient treasure trove. We were actually discovered by them. Lin Dong's eyes gradually became grave. He became cautious, appearing as though he was faced with a great enemy. He clearly understood that despite having already raised his strength to that of the 3-yuan Nirvana stage, he was still able to sense a dangerous feeling from the bodies of these two mysterious experts. Although this kind of danger was much weaker compared to when he had first seen them, these two people were clearly not people whom Zhu Huqian's group could compare with. It is really surprising. You can actually discover our presence. The two black shadows were suspended in the sky. Two pairs of cold eyes were staring at Lin Dong's group under the black glow as they spoke sinisterly. May I know what great being the two of you are? What are you planning to do by following behind us? The surprise in Lin Dong's eyes were withdrawn as he spoke with a calm manner. Brat, why are you still acting foolish in front of us? We have met before in the Nirvana burning sky array. A black figure let out a soft cold laughter. Although we did not see your appearance back then, we can still clearly remember your aura. Seeing that you have fled so quickly back then, it is likely that you have overheard something, right? Another black shadow laughed in a dense manner. Lin Dong's eyes became chilly. He was not certain what exactly these people wanted to do. However, it was likely that it involved quite a great conspiracy. These two fellows had been guarding at the ancient hall after Lin Dong met them back then. It was likely that they were waiting for him to reappear. You two ghost-like beings of unknown origin. We are not the least bit interested in your issues. The both of you should also not pester us. Let's not meddle in each other's affairs. If you get overboard, don't think that Grandpa Martin does not have some tactics to deal with you. Little Martin's handsome face revealed a chillness as he said. Little Flame did not utter a single word. His large body stepped forward. His face, which originally carried a simple and honest look, had turned incomparably fierce at this moment. A fierceness rose from all over his body, causing him to transform into a demon-like being in the blink of an eye. What arrogant words. Even those Super Empire's bosses don't dare to say such words to me. Who do you think you are? A black figure suddenly laughed. His tone was filled with ridicule. Do you really think that you are considered amongst the top within this ancient battlefield just because you have defeated two members from a Super Empire? The other black shadow also laughed eerily. Little Martin narrowed both of his eyes slightly, but he was not angry. A strange smile was lifted on his handsome face. In the next instant, his body abruptly shot forward and an afterimage strangely appeared. Swoosh! Little Martin's speed was lightning-like. In the blink of an eye, he had already appeared below the two figures in a ghost-like fashion. Monstrous purple-black energy surged out and actually transformed into blade-like wings. A shocking cold glint flashed past the tip of those wings. The expressions of the two black shadows changed the moment that purple-black wings appeared. Even they could sense a dense bone-chilling cold from them. Immediately, he waved his hand and a golden glow surged out from within his body, forming a gold-colored shield in front of them. Clang! The blade-like wings ruthlessly hacked onto the gold-colored shields. Sparks erupted and the gold-colored shield was immediately covered by cracked lines. The two black shadows also took the opportunity to pull back. Those eyes under the black shadows scintillated slightly. Bang! However, just when the two figures were pulling back, shocking wind came sweeping over from the space above. A large black-colored rod hacked downwards while carrying a terrifying strength that could blast apart a mountain. Humph! The continuous attack had clearly caused these two mysterious figures to become a little furious. One of them clenched his hand and a bright gold glow agglomerated in his hand. It actually transformed into an enormous gold-colored large hammer. The hammer danced and ruthlessly smashed on the black-colored large rod. Bang! Wild and violent storm rippled and swept apart. The black-colored rod was actually forced back by it. Little Martin's feet made a couple of rapid steps before stabilizing his body. The fierceness and ruthlessness on his face became increasingly intense. Golden body agglomerating objects. Lin Dong's expression also became increasingly grave as he watched the gold shield and gold axe that these two mysterious people had randomly formed. This was a real energy substance that was formed from using the energy of the golden body. However, this kind of energy was something that only those experts who had stepped into the 4-yuan nirvana stage could barely control. You two are a little too inexperienced to play this tactic in front of Grandpa Martin. Little Martin's handsome face was unusually icy cold. He widened his mouth and purple-black glow swept out from all directions. Finally, it appeared to have transformed into an enormous dark mouth that seemed to be able to swallow the world. This mouth bit towards the two black shadows in a lightning-like manner. Lin Dong sensed a kind of energy that was somewhat similar to the devouring ancestral symbol from within that large dark mouth. However, it was not as pure as that of the devouring ancestral symbol. Instead, it was mixed with some other things. Heaven-swallowing demonic light. A dense and cold cry was suddenly emitted from little Martin's mouth. That purple-black glow had also surged out from within the black light in all directions at this moment. Daytime turned into darkness. Its momentum was extremely shocking. Little Martin had finally begun to unleash the terrifying strength that belonged to him after regaining his physical body. This video will end here.